The Dice Tower, episode 662, Ruleville.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them.
In today's show, Eric Summerer joins us to talk a few games. We're going to take a look at the new Roll and Write app from Portal Games, and Eric gets to serve up his very own slice of game pie. I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
I'm Mandi Hutchinson.
And I'm Eric Summerer. Hello there.
What? No! The crowd goes wild.
Oh, please.
Eric, thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
I always love getting to hang out with the both of you. And one thing that we've received feedback on in the recent survey that we did here for the Dice Tower podcast is that people want to see us mix together more often. And I always love hanging out with the both of you.
Oh. And Tom actually was just, it was a timing thing. Tom had tried to make this work to jump on the episode too, but it was just, schedules and all that good stuff. So we're going to talk some games today, folks. Mandi, thank you for squeezing this in. You're a busy little bee this weekend. What's going on?
I know. When this airs, I think it will be over, but currently I am involved in Renegade Con, or for all the cool kids, RenCon. Yeah.
I like it.
Right? Kind of fun.
Not to be mixed up with Ren Fair, right?
Right. No.
No, it's a combination.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
whoa.
Totally different thing, but it's literally like the convention experience, but virtually. So, there's some games played online through Tabletopia. You get to see me with some friends online telling you what happens throughout the day, and some panels and workshops. So it's literally like being at a convention, but online. But we did say, you could put your shoes on at home, your con shoes, and like pretend you're going. So you could go in your kitchen and like wait in line and tap your watch like, I have a panel to go to, just to get that feel of the convention.
This is one of the first of the virtual cons. There have been maybe a couple before this. How has the experience been going for you? Do you feel like this is a convention? Are you getting that connection that you would normally get from an in-person event?
I'm going to say sort of. So usually at a convention, I'm exhausted. That hasn't quite set in yet. So that part of it I'm not feeling. But the interaction with people in the chat, having the talks online with my hosts and with people there in the chat, I think that part is the same. But my peppiness is definitely at 100%, where normally it is probably at half that because I'm tired. So
peppiness is good.
Peppiness is really good. Maybe too much, I don't know, but it's keeping people engaged. So yeah, I would say the actual experience feels a little different, but you still get that warm and fuzzy that you're getting to chat with people and play games with people.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to watch some of it. That's awesome.
It'll be fun.
And I wanted to just quickly address a couple of emails. I always get asked, because somehow, I don't know where y'all get this idea from, but for some reason people ask me about Roll and Write games a lot. I have
weird.
no idea why.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
kind of odd. But I wanted to point out that a Roll and Write game I've spoken about previously that was kind of hard to get in certainly the North American market is much easier because Game Right picked up the game Metro X, which used to be only available in really the Asian markets over there by Hisashi Hayashi. It is one of the best, most brain-burnery, that's a word, right?
Brain
Yes.
burner
Go with that.
E.
Yeah.
I'll allow it.
Game in such a simple format. So I just wanted to drop that note for some of you that have contacted me about, well, where can I find this game? I heard you talking about this game. Guess what? You can go to your friendly local game store. You could go to your friendly local Target. You can go to your friendly local online store because Metro X is available now, and I'm so excited about that.
Very cool. I have yet to play this one, so I need to track down one of these Game Right copies.
Yes, you do. And if you ever need a teacher, I am there for you.
Okay.
Now, Eric, you're not a guest. It's kind of weird because you're really not a
Right?
guest. So don't expect any special treatment.
That's
I was
fine.
waiting for that part.
No, that's fine. You could go for it. I'm just hanging out.
But we're so delighted to have you here. Maybe you'd be willing to kick off games played for us first?
Oh, let's do it. So, what have you been playing lately? So first up is a game from Bicycle Playing Card Company. We talked, both Tom and I talked about the Alpha a few weeks ago, but this is called Exchange. They're not very clear on the Bicycle Games edition who the designer is, but Board Game Geek says the designer is Eric Sillies, or Sillis. It's about $29.99 directly from bicyclecards.com. I wasn't able to find it at any of the discount online retailers, but $30 isn't too bad for this game. This is part of their light strategy line, light strategy games from Bicycle, and this is a stock game. In the Exchange, you're going to play over the course of 5 rounds. It's actually more like 5.5 rounds. There are 3 different commodities in the game. I think it's banks, bonds, and is it stocks? Banks, bonds. It's 3. It's blue, it's green, and it's orange.
I understand. I get that.
Yes, and they start on a continuum at $50 a share. And they can go up and down, and the track will loop. Depends on the number of players, but either when it drops below 20 or 10, if there are more players, it's a wider swath that it can be. It will loop back around to the top of the track, which is then either 80 or 90, and vice versa. If the price gets too high, it goes back down. Pretty simple mechanism right there. There are 3 phases to every round, and you will decide what you're going to do using these cards. You have a little card sleeve that says Phase 1. And phase 1 is pick one of those 3 colors. That's all. Everybody simultaneously chooses one of those 3 colors, puts it in the sleeve, puts it face down on the table, then everyone reveals, and you now have, all right, I'm dealing with bonds, and you're dealing with banks, and you're dealing with bonds as well. Okay, phase 2 is whether you are buying or selling and how much. You've got a deck of 9 cards, 1 through 9, and they're double-sided, so one says buy and one says sell. You put this in the envelope and put it face down. They will all reveal. But when they reveal, they're in this envelope, so they only say buy or sell. You can't see how much. So now you can look around the table and say, well, I am buying bonds, and Mandy, you are selling stocks, and Suzanne is selling bonds. Then phase 3 is adjusting the market. You've got cards that are +1, -1 for all 3 of those colors. You then choose one of those 3 things. Everybody reveals, you adjust the market, and then there is a random event that can also adjust the market and totally mess with your plans. Then you execute the sales. So then, you know that we're doing a buy or a sell, but you don't know how much, and you're forced to then execute that sale based on the new price that's been adjusted. You continue this for 5 rounds. The only thing that changes is that whoever has the most money at the end of the first round gets a set of lobbyist cards, which is an additional vote for that phase 3, another +1, -1. So you can do essentially a +2 or 2 different +1s or a +1 and a -1. You have double the power if you have the lobbyist cards. The other thing you can do is pay $50 to look at that random event. You can pick it up, take a look, and maybe factor that into your plans. It is a very simple system, which is what I think they're going for here. This is not supposed to be a deep stock game. This is a light strategy game, as it says on the box. And I think they are, again, hitting the mark on that. The key here is reading your opponents. What are your opponents going to do? Do I think that you're going to mess with the price that you are about to buy? Or do I think you're going to mess with me if my price is dangling on the edge of that bubble? If you give that a +1, then suddenly I'm only getting $20 instead of $80 for my stock shares. And I played this with my kids. They seemed to understand the buy low, sell high, knocking the price down if you're about to buy, knocking it up if you want to sell. But they didn't always take the opportunity to mess with me. I ended up winning the game because they both thought the other child was going to push the price over the bubble on my final stock that I had a whole bunch of. Of course, at the end of the game, you just liquidate everything and most money wins. It's not one that I feel like I'm going to play a lot, but I did appreciate how they both got it. The 9-year-old and the 12-year-old both understood this game, understood the mechanisms, and both did fairly well, made some good moves and earned some cash. We all had respectable scores by the end of it. So again, I think this is a success for Bicycle. It's not quite as deep as I would prefer it to be. That is Exchange from Bicycle Games.
Now, Eric, does this come in a deck box size game box, or is this more like a full size game box?
It is a full, well, not giant, but it's a I want to say Splendor size box.
Okay, so it's more of a game box size thing.
Yes, because everybody gets these. They have a mat, a slider mat with 3 sliders that say how much stock you have in each of these. They're not the greatest things in the world, but it is kind of nice to work with those. And then, of course, all the envelopes and cards, and it's card money that is your cash on hand. So there's a good amount of components in here that has to go in a box.
Cool.
It's interesting hearing that type of game from Bicycle. I mean, obviously, when you think Bicycle, you think, the cards or very kind of simple type games. So do you think they're trying to get a different kind of market? I mean, you've played it with your kids and they, for the most part, understood the concept of the game. But I don't know. What do you think that's something they're trying to branch out in, or you just think it's in vain with what they're doing now?
Well, I think they're definitely trying to expand. The Alpha and Exchange are their 2 most recent. They actually came out with a Mealborn-like racing game a few... last Gen Con, I think they came out with that. I wasn't terribly impressed with that, but these are maybe a little bit higher notch. The Alpha has terrific production value. They are trying to break into this market, but they're definitely aiming for that mass market, easy entry, light strategy, as it says on the box.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Interesting. Thanks.
We'll move on to another essentially card game that, Eric, you could possibly play with your kids, although I would be interested to hear how that goes. We're going to talk about The Mind Extreme.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, say it, Eric. Say it.
The Mind Extreme.
Oh, dang. That was good.
It does have a nice ring to it there.
Love it.
I'll say all the names like that if you want.
Done. In. The Mind Extreme is the next evolution of The Mind. It's also designed by Wolfgang Warsch. Art is by Oliver. We're going to go with Oliver Freudenreich. And it retails for $15. It was originally published by NSV Games, but in North America, it's published by Pandasaurus. The Mind Extreme is really the mind kind of meets the game in a way. Really, it clings to the essence of The Mind, which is the game that people argue about if it's a game, where you go through a ladder, and in the first round you play 1 card, in the second round you play 2 cards, in the third round you play 3 cards, etc. And you're trying to play cards in ascending order with your teammates, with your fellow players, without any communication. So it's that game where you're subtly kind of doing a little bit of squishing in your chair and a lot of eye contact and trying to do this thing. It's got rabbits on it with shuriken, like ninja star kind of stuff. Whatever. A lot of people talk about The Mind for a while. It's been out. So The Mind Extreme is really trying to take that to the next level, because now you have 1 through 50 instead of The Mind is 1 through 100, I think. And you have 2 stacks of 1 to 50. There's red cards and there's white cards. White cards you want to go ascending, red cards you want to play descending. And all the cards are mixed together. So you don't know if you're going to have a red card or a white card, or whether your fellow players are going to have a red card or a white card, or how many of them, etc. You don't know if your fellow players are going to be playing a white card to the ascending column or a red card to the descending column. And it just adds this whole additional layer of wah to a game that was already full of wah. On top of that, every few rounds, you play your cards face down.
Oh.
And you don't get to see, after the round is done, you do a reveal, and then you find out if you flubbed it up or not. Which is a really interesting change, because I found it changes where the emotional spikes are during a round. Because when you're playing, let's say you're playing the 6-card round, and somebody flubs up the second card. Boom, you know you're done. In the 6-card round, when you're playing face down, you wait until the end. You're all playing it, and you've kind of got this tension building up, and then you flip it, and you see right away, oh, we actually messed up in the second card. It's an interesting emotional dynamic that actually feels a little different than The Mind. Ultimately, it's the very same rhythmically. You, as you go through rounds, you get more cards. Some rounds give you different bonuses if you manage to complete the level. And if you can complete all the levels, you've technically won the game called The Mind. So I played this there's a German edition that typically comes out earlier, and now Pandasaurus has released an English edition, which is wonderful. But I've played this at a convention with strangers, and I've played it with my family, and wow, the dynamics are so important, and repeat plays are so important, which is also true of the Mind. But I find the Mind Extreme to be measures more challenging than the Mind. I cannot imagine a situation where I would teach somebody the Mind Extreme before I teach them the Mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I can envision that there are just groups I would never want to play the Mind Extreme with. It is much more challenging. And one of the controversies in the Mind is communication. You're not allowed to talk. But what are you allowed to do?
Yeah.
The whole... long eye contact, the body language, the crossing of arms, the closing of eyes, the putting of head on table, the slow push of a card across the table, right? We all, like, what are the limits?
Yeah.
It's so much more complex in the Mind Extreme with that extra pile of cards and which one are you going to? And it just, the timing of tracking two different, I just found it to be very, very different. And playing with strangers that you don't know, you have to play 1, 2, 3 rounds to even understand each individual sense of timing and urgency and anxiety, because that's what drives a lot of the gameplay. So playing with new groups at a convention was, I will say it was frustrating for me, right? Not negative, just frustrating because you felt like you were just learning their communication and their timing before you could even really functionally play it. Arguably, that's part of playing the Mind, right? Is getting to know. So maybe it's more successful in achieving that. Ultimately, for me, the Mind Extreme is fascinating. It is difficult. The playing of face down, I did not love. I did not like that change in emotional spikes. If you are looking for something more challenging than the Mind, because certainly I have friend groups that got it down. The straightforwardness of the Mind, they know. They can just do it. They got their internal kind of meta timing down, and they can cruise through it, and they were looking for ways to make it more challenging. I was not looking for ways to make it more challenging. So the Mind Extreme, I think it's fascinating. I found it stressful. And I would probably be more inclined to master the Mind before I try to move on to the Mind Extreme. And I will likely never play this with my children again until they are, let's say, in high school.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, I have a copy of the Mind Extreme, which I picked up, the German version, immediately. Yes. And my son tried it out, but I never got it to the table with them. Partially because when we tried playing the Mind, we failed almost instantly. I think we failed round 1.
Right.
Because my youngest was much more eager to play his cards. He was not, we need a lot more work as a group to get that sense of timing figured out. And that really is the game in the Mind. It's figuring out your group and what you're doing. So this is definitely a next level game for people who have mastered the Mind. Mm-hmm. This isn't a just slightly more complex sort of, let's start with this one anyway because we're gamers. This is level 2.
I agree.
Or level 2-1 or whatever, if you want to take a Super Mario reference. But I think your point about the communication differences are interesting too, because the Mind is, if you follow the letter of the law of the rulebook, you're not supposed to communicate at all.
Right.
And all you're supposed to do is card play. And there shouldn't be this sort of, I'm going to put this card on the table, but I'm not going to flip it over yet. I'm going to look at you for a while, just holding this card here. And then I'm going to slide it forward an inch, but I'm still not going to flip it over. Like that, and many groups play that way, and I think it is fun to play that way, but that adds a lot more communication and information. And when you're doing extreme and have 2 piles, if I slide toward the red pile, that's probably crossing the line. That's not, you got to slide to the middle of the table. You can't slide toward a pile. So finding that line with your group is also an interesting metagame in the Mind.
Indeed.
I have not played the Mind Extreme. I've played the Mind, and I won't say who I played it with, but there is someone in particular who does like what I call the bumper card bumper card cards where they kind of like push their card forward and kind of like touch your card. Kind of like, I don't understand where this is going. So yes, I played with that. You know who you are. I know you listen to the podcast. And the Mind Extreme for me, the first thing that comes to my mind is delayed disappointment. So, and I'm like, do I want to know if I'm disappointed now or later? I don't know. So it's one I would want to try, but I'm scared that I would be, so upset at the end that we didn't do it. And I play with some really competitive people. So it's almost like you want to know ahead of time. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's almost like you need a nice, relaxing trip to a koi garden after you play the Mind Extreme.
Sounds good. Oh, I didn't know we were supposed to do segues. That's excellent.
Actually, that was a very good one.
Come on, Eric, we're the Segue Queens.
Mine would have been terrible. Mine would have been like, well, the mind playing it outside, like in a garden. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I think we should stick with Suzanne's.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
So speaking of gardens, the game that I will be talking about today is Tang Garden. And let me preface this by saying this is more of a first impressions because I've only kind of played through one game and it was through Tabletopia. So I haven't felt the components or anything like that. So it's just going to be kind of a scratch the first level surface of talking about it and then potentially revisit it again once I've had some time to play it a little bit more. So Tang Garden is designed by Francesco Testini and Pierluca Zizi. The artist is Matthew Mizak, and it's published by Thundergriff Games, but I think recently just picked up by Lucky Duck Games. And this retails for about $60 Canadian, and in the US, I believe it is currently on pre-order in Canada. I'm not sure about the States. It is a tile placement and set collection type game. So, Tang Garden. Well, it's exactly what it's talking about, the Tang Dynasty. And you're basically trying to build up a garden, creating landscape, scenery, and, making your garden look beautiful. So this game, there are lots of actions. Let's start by saying that. You have to take one kind of mandatory action. You have a choice from two, and then there are kind of additional optional actions that you can also take. So one of the actions that you can take on your turn is building your garden. And this allows you to take tiles. There are 4 piles of tiles that sounded weird because it rhymed. 4 piles of tiles around the board. I'm sorry. And you don't get to see the whole stack. They're flipped up based on just the top tile. And then you get to choose one. And they're terrains that you want to put on the board. The terrains are important because it can affect types of decorations that you can place in your garden. So you really want to try and get tiles out that have gardens or that have water so fish can go in them and things like that. So that's something that you can do. And you, again, want to try and line them up in accordance to the kind of correct tiles that a road connects, because that gives you points, or similar type terrain, and then closing off areas can also get you points. So kind of a la Carcassonne, a little bit, if you can think of it that way. Another action you can do is decorating the garden, and this is where the cards are involved. So you either build or decorate. So what ends up happening is you get to draw 2 cards plus 1 card for each face-down garden tile in the stacks, because when you take a tile and place it, you do not flip up another tile right away. It's only till you get down, I think it's to 2 tiles, and then other ones will come out. So you're kind of limited if you are taking that tile action, and we'll talk about how that affected the game a bit later. So decorating the garden allows you to pick these cards. So you get 2 plus 1 for each face down stack. Cards are important. This is where your set collection comes into play. You want to try and get collections of trees. Now, when you get a certain trees, let's say cards come out and there's trees, there could be fish, any type of, decoration is what they call it. You want to choose based on the ability of the person that you kind of have. It's like a power. So this person, quote unquote, is someone that's going to be in your garden, someone that you place in the garden, and they have designated spots for this person to face. And we'll talk about where they face and how that's important in a moment. Some of them have abilities where you want to have lots of trees, or you want to score points with lots of fish. So you may want to choose cards that are going to allow you to collect set collection for trees or fish to give you those extra points. And these are things that you actually place physically on the board in the form of like a tile or like an actual tree. So that's something to consider as well. The figures that I was talking about, those are important because we have to look at line of sight. We have areas of the board that you want to place these kind of large, they're not tiles, but almost scenery. So they have big ones and small ones. And those can be placed on the board when you've covered with tiles certain parts of the board. There are these little tokens that have a small scenery scene or a large scenery scene. And if you cover one of those with a tile, you take that off and it allows you to put whatever it was corresponding to on the board. Now you want to try and put them where the person you've placed on the board is facing because they have symbols on them. And depending on what your end scoring is on the card you have for that person, you may want them to face a tile that has a tree symbol or has a deer symbol or something along those lines. So that's something to be mindful of. And you can, in the game, acquire more people to place on the board to face these decorations to get points. But you can only use the ability of the card of the person that you've just received. So it's a little complicated. It gives you an idea of how that works. And then you have other free actions where collecting those tiles where you've placed the scenery, when you have so many of those, it allows you to kind of refresh other tiles that you have on your board that give you free actions. Ooh, that's a lot. And this is supposed to be kind of a simpler type game, but I disagree. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So the end of the game is triggered when one of the garden-style tile stacks is empty or 3 landscape tokens remain on the board. And those are those tokens I was talking about where if you cover, you get to put out one of those kind of scenery or landscape tiles. And then you just play to the end of that round. So that's just the base game, and there are additional pieces, but this is what I had played during that time. So this game is classified as like a light to maybe a medium strategy. Well, I beg to differ. So I don't know if it's just because I play complicated games and I'm so used to that mindset. It took me a while to kind of get the actions. Now, to be fair, the rules were not great. I did kind of reach out to find out what was going on with the rules, and I was told that there is a better rule set. Anything that's currently on BGG right now, not super clear. So that could have been a language thing. I'm not 100% sure, but that definitely played into the difficulty of kind of figuring out the game. And it wasn't just me. It was a lot of us trying to figure it out. So partway through, we realized that some things we weren't doing as effectively. And that made a big change in how we played the game. So lots of things you can do, lots of things to keep track of. I don't necessarily think I would consider this a quote unquote lighter strategy game. I definitely think it falls closer to the medium kind of mindset for that. I did like the visual aspect of the art, like the decorations and the trees. I did have some concerns about the character cards that you had with the special abilities. I do feel that there maybe should have been a higher nod to the actual cultural aspect of the people on the card, the attire. So that's something that I think could have been worked on. And they could have inserted more of the historical aspect that they were talking about. Tang Dynasty, that's a big deal. Most people have heard of it. Push that in the game because they definitely made it look like it was in that era. So why not add more context to it? So overall, we enjoyed it. We liked the kind of, the strategy portion of the game. I definitely feel there was a slight imbalance with the tiles, picking the tiles and then picking the cards for the set collection. You had one player, if they had an ability, we're trying to get all the tiles out. But then in doing so, we're setting out tiles for us to use when we had to place trees or fish on the board. So there was a little bit of arguing with that. Like, well, then I'm not going to put tiles out if you're just going to take them. You know what I mean? So it was, so it got into that a little bit. So that has to be mindful when you're looking for the ability. So overall, I liked the game, but I did have some concerns about the art and the historical aspect. Yeah, so Tang Garden.
Now, I don't know why anybody asks me about roll and write games. I really don't. But I figured I might as well talk about one since everybody's pestering me about them randomly.
My goodness. I'm sorry. You all can't see it. I'm seeing it, and I am laughing to myself about this game. Suzanne is going to tell you why I am laughing about this game. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Eric, would you like to say the name of the game?
Well, I can try. How about Knapp Daneben?
Very nice. I have no idea if that's correct, but I am going to hope it is. And it does matter. I was calling it Knapp Daneben.
Yes.
And
sure.
I think that may be wrong. I'm not sure, but it certainly got me laughed at a lot.
It did, actually. I do remember that.
It is Knap with a K, Knappdaneben. So Knap? Or is it just Knap?
No, I think the Knap part is right. I think it's the second part that Suzanne was getting laughed at.
Or the whole thing.
Oh, sure. Why not?
Because, but this is a game I am very blessed that I get the opportunity to go to the Spiel at Essen, and it's my favorite convention of the year. And I do make it one of my goals to get all of the roll and write games out of Europe or Asia that sometimes exhibits there. Pardon?
You try and get all of them that come out?
Yeah.
Yes.
She does.
Wow.
Yes. I have many. And I had a great successful time. I pre-ordered when I could, things like this. But there was this one roll and write game that I just could not find. The Board Game Geek preview had listed it. I knew it was supposed to be available, but and it was on my shopping list. And every day, I went looking for it and could not find it. And bless Mandy. She's right there next to me, frantically taking advantage of our breaks, running around this crowded hall full of people looking for games. Knapp Daneben? Knapp Daneben? You have Knapp Daneben? Every booth that was selling roll and write games, the publisher, nobody had it, right? Nobody had it. Every day, right? Man, do you remember?
Oh, it was one point. I'm like, did you? I literally thought you potentially might have been like dreaming of this and it wasn't actually a game because the looks of confusion was just
and it didn't help that I am very poor with languages, and I go up to these booths that are selling a wide variety of games, and I'm saying Knapp Daneben, and they're looking at me like I'm banana pants. They have no idea what I'm asking for, which created another small barrier.
Oh, dear. Yeah.
Is this why every time you got back to the booth, you were out of breath?
Right.
I feel like...
Probably.
Okay. This futile quest of yours.
Knapp Daneben is designed by Andreas Kunikath, and it is published by Schmidt Spiel. It retails for €7. It's not an expensive game.
Yeah.
Now, we'll say up front that this one has not been ported over to the United States or to North America. So if you are interested in getting a copy of the game, you will be looking online to import it if you're not in Europe. Mm-hmm. Knapp Daneben is a roll and write game. It's one of the ones that are very simple. You look at your sheet and it looks like a little grid almost, with little circles and little squares in between them that form a grid. And you get 5 plain D6s, red, green, yellow, blue, very standard stuff. Your goal ultimately is you're going to fill in all the circles and then the game ends. It's a 5x5 grid, so 25 rolls and the game is over. And then you are going to get points based on essentially getting low numbers or high numbers or off numbers. So 2s and 12s will get you points. 7s will not. But also adjacency. So in this grid, between each little circle, there's a little tiny square. And if you write a 3 in a red circle and a 4 in the yellow circle next to it, you get to mark off the little square in between because they are sequential. So you want to fill this grid theoretically with sequential matches all the way around because it's a grid, so it's all the way around. And you get little squares all the way around numbers, so you could match to the north but not match to the south, that kind of thing. And at the end of the game, you're going to count how many of these little squares you've done in each row and get points for that. You're going to count all the little squares you managed to get in the columns, get points for that. And for specific numbers, there's a grid to the side that you're going to mark off numbers, and then you're going to hit a point marker at that point, and you'll get those points as well. If you didn't pick up on it, the circles are all different colors. So when you're rolling these dice, every player gets to pick one colored dice and any other dice and combine those numbers, and then that's the number you're going to write on your grid. It's completely open. So if you see the blue 2 and the red 4, you could do a red 6 or a blue 6. Or if you see the blue 2 and the yellow 1, you could do a yellow 3 or a blue 3. There's a fair amount of flexibility in your choices there. So you're going through these rolls, taking turn rolling. There's no denial. It is absolutely 100% multiplayer solitaire. And you can play it absolutely solo with no change in how the game feels virtually. You roll 25 times, fill in your grid, try to get those adjacencies, try to do, 2s and 12s or that kind of thing. Count your points. Bob's your uncle. That's the whole game. It's very, very simple. I've actually played it a fair amount. There is what I feel like a high-low strategy. You want to work these lower numbers because they'll get you some points, or work the higher numbers because they'll get you some points, and then work quadrants in kind of zones. You kind of want to, hey, I'm going to go in that 3, 4, 5 range, that 2, 3, 4, 5 range. I want 2, 3, 4s, and 5s. Oh, crud, I rolled a bunch of 6s. Okay, in this lower area, I'm going to do 10, 11, 12s, 10, 11, 12s, 10, 11, 12s. And then there's going to be a little area where you just don't get any adjacency and you don't get those points. So I don't know. Maybe I've played it so much that that's what it is. There's definitely some mitigation that happens and you have to flow with what the dice, because that's one of the things. It's a random element. You got to deal with it. I like Knapp Daneben. Knapp Daneben. I think it's fun. It's very simple. I would love to see it as an app, just a quick throw you down. I will say I think it gets samey after you play it a number of times. It just, every game is the same. There's no variation in the sheets. It is multiplayer solitaire. I like it. I don't think it's going to be in my top 10, but for that kind of game, it's solid. There is something appealing about the puzzle of mapping out and planning out where you're putting numbers so that you can maximize your adjacency. But ultimately, you have to deal with the random numbers that pop up. So, Knapp Daneben, Mandi, I finally got a hold of it. Let's be clear, I never got a hold of it at the Spiel. Yeah. I had to order it online.
When, was this a recent acquisition? Because you didn't even tell me.
I'm sorry. Actually, I got it not too long after the Spiel, so I've had it for a while. Yeah.
Oh, that does not make me feel better that you've had it for a while and didn't tell me.
Sorry.
Sorry, Eric, I cut you off there.
But considering the amount of time and effort put toward acquiring this game, I mean, €7 is pretty much impulse buy, I would imagine. But for the amount of time that you had to spend to get this game, has it been worth it?
That's a good question.
I think the story that we managed to wreak out of the hunt helps balance that monetary equation.
As long as you tell the story every time you pull the game out, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yes, certainly nobody's going to get tired of that.
So my last game to talk about is also a dice game, but maybe a little easier to get. This is one I introduced to the children. It's been out for some time now, and it's Roll for the Galaxy. This is published by Rio Grande Games, designed by Wei-Hua Huang and Tom Lehman. It is the dice version of Roll for the Galaxy. And I went to a couple of sources online. It's about $55 to $60 to buy a new copy these days. In Roll for the Galaxy, you have the familiar concept of developments and planets, and you're trying to add to your empire, and these are represented by tiles that you will draw. They have costs. Some of the more powerful planets will be very expensive to build, and some of the less powerful ones will be very easy, quick to build. You will acquire points by building these developments and worlds, and also by adding goods to them and shipping those goods for points and for money. It's got this whole dice system where you acquire money that will allow you to buy more dice to go in your cup, and you roll the dice in your cup every turn, then use those on these, the abilities and actions you're going to do, and then they get shuffled back into your citizenry, which is sort of a discard pile, and then you have to spend money to get them back in your cup so you can use them again. It has the familiar choose a phase concept that Race for the Galaxy has. Every turn you will choose one of the phases. There's an exploration phase where you're looking for more tiles or maybe just earning some money for yourself. There's a development phase where you're going to build those development tiles, those technologies. There's a settle phase where you are going to build those planets. There is a produced phase where you put dice on those planets as their goods, and there's a shipping phase where you will ship those goods for money and for points. You choose one of those, and you're behind a shield, and you will assign all of your dice that match those symbols so that you make those actions more powerful. Then everyone reveals, and only the actions that were selected by the players will actually get to trigger. And there's ways as you acquire more technologies, and you can mitigate the luck of the dice by maybe spending a die to reassign other dice and change the symbols on them, and all sorts of stuff that as you get more tiles in front of you, you can do more things. I was inspired to bring this out to the children because the app is now in beta, and so I've been noodling around with that. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to teach it to them because I thought, all the colorful dice, and I think they would enjoy that whole process. But I was like, I think they need the tactile nature of bringing this out. My copy of Roll for the Galaxy has the first expansion in it. I have not spent the money to get the sprawling second expansion. I don't think it's necessary to own that second expansion. The first has plenty of new things in it. The kids were resistant at first. But even though they complained a lot, I think they both started immediately clicking. Like, they're like, ooh, I see how this goes. And if I do this, I get more money and I can get all the dice back into my cup. And my youngest was very big on trying to get as much money as possible. So he's rolling messes of dice, which just sort of lets you stumble into doing some cool things, even if you aren't planning on it. If you're just able to churn dice, you can start building things very quickly. Whereas my other child, the 12-year-old, was going with a particular strategy. He needed red dice, and he's getting anything that gets him red dice, and he was able to cycle those dice more easily, and he was really exploiting his powers that were on the planets and the developments he was building. And I thought he had me destroyed. I managed to sneak out a win just because I was able to get a shipping strategy going.
Right.
But I still love this game. I think I like it better. I still like it better than Race. I think it's easier to teach than Race for the Galaxy because it doesn't have that complete mess of symbols.
Right.
It's a lot more clear about what triggers when and what phase it's associated with, and it's just a little more streamlined. And then, of course, the luck of the dice and rolling messes of colored dice is always fun. So even though it says 14 plus on the side of the box, my 9-year-old had no trouble understanding what he was supposed to do. It is not that complicated. Of course, the interaction of all of the strategies and the different developments and powers and sort of churning through the tiles as you do explore actions, that's sort of advanced level searching for the stuff that really fits your strategy. Mm-hmm. But as far as understanding the basics and what he needed to do to earn points and earn money, they both got it, no problem. Huh. So success with Roll for the Galaxy from Rio Grande, and I've already played it multiple times with them.
And you've played it with me too, Eric. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh boy, was that like the first? Was that BGG when we first got the copy? Because that was a fun adventure because there were printing errors. There was this Board Game Geek. They released maybe 50 copies into the wild at Board Game Geek Con, and it was way ahead of the release. The full version wasn't coming out for a couple months. So people flocked, let me get a copy. And as everyone opened them, they realized that there were errors all over the place, and not all of the punch boards were in every copy. Were you on the game, Suze, that we ran out of tiles?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Oh, my goodness. So my copy, I didn't realize. I didn't have any duplicates, I don't think, but I was missing at least one full punch board worth of tiles.
Oh, no.
And so in a 5-player game, as we're drawing tiles and churning through the system, all of a sudden we're like, what happens when there aren't any tiles in the bag? And I'm like, well, that shouldn't happen. And we found out that it was because we had not gotten all of the pieces of the game. They fixed it. They actually did a great job.
Now.
Yeah, it's all good. But there was this weekend when everyone's super excited to play Roll for the Galaxy. Here we go. And this disappointment settled over the gaming hall. Like, this is broken. This is not. And people were trading, I have this punch board, you have this punch board. And it was a mess. But they fixed it. It's all good.
Yeah, it's
Get
all
a new
good.
copy of Roll for the Galaxy and it should be just fine.
I'm glad to hear that you could play it with your kids because I personally, I do enjoy Roll, but I prefer Race over Roll. But I could see if you're playing with a younger audience or maybe someone who, there's a lot of iconography and learning symbols in Race. Mm-hmm. This is a nice alternative, but you're still getting that same feel for the game. So I've only played it, I think, once. So now that I know that you and Suze are experts, going to have to set up.
Yeah, well, and now that there's that app, we can probably
That's right.
up and play
I have the app. We can play together.
Yes.
Speaking of apps.
Segway!
Oh, stop it. You're making me look bad. Brought to you by the Op Games, also known as USAopoly. If you're looking for something that is fun for the whole family and can also be played virtually, then the Blank Slate board game is your best bet. Blank Slate is the clever party game where you try to predict what others are thinking. For ages 8 and up, 3 or more players, and is available for pickup at your favorite toy or game shop or online.
And now let's look at the digital side of board gaming with Tap That App. I I get to kick things off for a Tap That App segment. I'm so excited to be here for this. So just recently, Portal Games released the Imperial Settlers Roll and Write app. It's a game originally designed by Ignacy Cevicek, and it's available for iOS and Android. Suze, you said it was $3.99.
Yep.
That's for both platforms?
Yep.
Very cool. I have no experience with the Imperial Settlers Roll and Write game, so I haven't played the physical version at all. I am totally judging this off of the app itself, so I don't know what the real version looks like. So in the Imperial Settlers Roll and Write, you are attempting to earn as many points as possible by utilizing your village board. Each game, each time you play the game, you'll be given an assortment of buildings that you can use. Now, the way the app is structured, you have sort of a progression. You will be trying to get the best score you can with a particular setup of buildings. And then that can unlock more setups of buildings as you achieve more games. I found this a little annoying because sometimes you have to play multiple games with the same setup in order to earn enough crowns to open up more cards, and I kind of wish they'd just let me play with the more cards. But let's get back to the game. You have a mat that has a series of 4 rows that have varying resources on them that you can unlock. You have these buildings that have been dealt for you, and you will have to build many of them using resources and actions in the game. And every turn of the game, you're going to roll 4 dice. 3 of those dice are resource dice. They'll tell you what resources you have to use this round. And the 4th die is an action die. It will display 3, 4, or 5 little pink meeples, and that is how many actions you have in the game. Almost everything you do here requires 1 action and may require a certain number of resources to do it. You can spend an action and an associated resource to start building those buildings. They take, I think it's either 2 or 3 resources, and they may be specific resources, or they may just be an action. It'll be like 3 boxes that you have to check off. And so it could take all 3 of your actions for a round to build one of these buildings. But once you have the building built, you get some sort of power, like additional resources every round, or if the dice all have different values, you get something. All of these things can be upgraded because there are these blueprints. It's a polyomino shape that you can place in those rows in the middle of your sheet. And every time you place one of those polyomino shapes, one of those blueprints, you upgrade the building that you have. So if you get 1 apple every round when you first build the farm, if you place that polyomino shape on those rows, you will now get 2 apples every round, then 3 apples if you build another one. So the more buildings you put out there, the more powerful those building powers get. However, you have to make room for those because each box on those rows needs to be cleared by spending resources. And some of those rows require multiple actions and resources to clear. There's one food row that is the bane of my existence that requires sometimes 3 actions to clear, like action to spend 1 apple, action to spend another apple, another action. Now I have an empty box. And you have to have empty boxes before you can put those polyomino blueprints into your empire and upgrade your buildings. There is also, I forgot to mention, a harvesting area at the bottom of your sheet that can get you some free resources. Say you don't roll stone for some reason. If you manage to build bridges to these farms that you have, and that's one of the rows on your sheet, you can spend an action to harvest a resource that you didn't necessarily get enough of in the roll of the dice. You continue like this for 10 rounds, and trying to earn as many points as possible. As you clear these rows in the center of your mat and make room for your blueprints, that's also worth points. And as you work your way across from the left to the right, those actions become more powerful and worth more points, but they'll need more resources. Getting the ball rolling here is the whole point, and starting to churn resources and not need as many actions to do things. But I did find, this, they always say it's always good to want to do more things than you're able to do in a game. Yeah. But there is a point at which that can get frustrating. And I did find this game frustrating when I'm only given 3 actions and like a truckload of wood. And I'm trying to figure out how to do something with all of that. And I get it, that's the constraints that you're supposed to work within. But when that farm track in the middle requires 3 actions or 2 actions to clear 1 box, and I only have 3 actions for the round, there's one more mechanic here, that there are these favor tokens. And these will be randomly associated with a particular game, randomly drawn. And you choose 1 each round in order to give yourself a little bit of a bonus. And that sometimes it's an extra action, sometimes it's a gold coin that is wild, sometimes it's additional harvesting, sometimes you can sell the resources you don't use at the end of a round. I find those helpful, but I also feel like that's a decision, if I was playing with the actual components in front of me, I would be able to consider that decision much better than I am in this app. They give you an option that you can sort of clear. At the beginning of the round, it says, which favor do you want to use? Like, I don't know. This one sounds good. You can, shuffle that off to the side, that decision, and look at the mat and sort of make a decision. But I think this is one of those things that I would rather be able to start the process of my turn and then realize that I need a different favor. And while you can reverse your basic actions in this app, you cannot back all the way up to the decision where you chose one of those favors. And so I would often find out, I chose the extra gold coin. I don't have enough actions to use that gold coin. Right. I would love to back up and choose a different favor, but you can't do that anymore. So I enjoy the system. I think it's interesting, and I want to unlock more buildings, but I want to be able to do that faster than having to play the same setups 4 or 5 times. And I also am annoyed that I only have 3 actions when I roll a 3. Anyway, how did you like it, Suzanne?
And I think that's fair, and I think you bring up some interesting points. What I find fascinating is, Eric, when you play video games, I don't have are you a grinder? Because that's what this, in some ways, is. The system that they set up, I find, is interesting because you have to basically grind levels to unlock
in order to unlock more buildings.
Right? And when I first hit it, I was actually thought it was kind of a cool system. I earned some crowns. I can unlock, and you can pick pretty much any of them, and you can preview them. And you can say, I want this one. I like this mix. I want to try this challenge. But then the crowns grow. And I liked that at first, but now I realize, wait, they keep on growing. Yeah. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe this is too much. So I would have maybe liked a threshold.
Right.
And maybe there is. I just haven't hit it yet because I haven't played enough. But I can understand that frustration. But really, some of what you're talking about when you're talking about the favors, it's a maximization puzzle. Yeah. And so when you go into a level, you have certain buildings, certain polyomino shapes, certain resources that are easier to generate or harder to generate, and maximizing around that, for me, feels like some of the puzzle. This one produces, that building's going to give me wood, and this one pays off on wood. So wood is maybe something I want to figure out. Okay, here are my favors. Maybe I need more action so I can get that little wood generation and payoff engine going. Or, I'm going to have plenty of wood. I need this lucky coin so that I can generate other resources to fill in those kinds of things. So for me, I understand your point. I just interpret that experience differently. I view it as a maximization puzzle.
Yeah. Well, I enjoy puzzles. I think I found the pointy edges a little more frustrating than I wanted them to be. And also the presentation of the buildings, while they went for this clean design where there's not text on everything. Yes. So once you've learned all these buildings and what they do, it makes it easier. You can very easily ignore stuff that you don't need to know already. But when you're learning these buildings, knowing just based on the illustration what the effect of a particular building is not intuitive until you have internalized all of that. And you have to click on the building and go, that's the one that earns me blah. Right. I've upgraded that twice. Okay, now it's a +3. Yep. I'm sure multiple plays will make it easier. but it's just a little. I just got annoyed because there was one set of buildings I was done with. I didn't want to play with these anymore,
Sure.
but I hadn't unlocked enough crowns to get more buildings. And if I had the real game, I'm sure I could just sift through the deck
Yes.
Very
and
true.
play with more stuff. And I want to be able to play with more stuff. That's all.
And Mandi, I know you've played this too. The only other thing, a couple of things I wanted to point out is my biggest frustration with the physical game, which I've played a lot.
And I know you're going to say what I'm going to think. I think we're going to be on the same page, yeah.
Is the resource calculation. So you're going to roll these dice and you know you have so many tomatoes, so many wood, plus your buildings start to produce it. Very quickly in the physical game, tracking your resources and your remaining actions becomes difficult because there's nothing provided in the game to help you count them.
Okay.
So in my physical game, I've actually added a bunch of plastic cubes. I have these counting cubes that you can buy in bulk. And I sorted out a bunch of the correct colors and added them to the game box so that when I play it physically, you can use those to help you track your actions and your resources. And that improves the physical gameplay so much. In the app game, guess what? It calculates it all
Does
for
it
you.
for you.
And it shows
Oh,
it
yeah.
right at the top of the screen. And you always know exactly what you have left, which I really like and is an improvement on the physical game.
I appreciate the coming from the other direction because while I found it sort of difficult to keep track when I was making that favor decision, it is easier than it would be if you had nothing. So,
Correct.
Yeah.
And the only other thing that I think you just hit on, Eric, is that the physical game has immense variability. Now, within a formula, yes, it's all within a formula. But there are so many different sheets, especially for solo play, that are in Imperial Settlers, the roll and write game. It's just an endless puzzle. And our very own Jason Levine came up with a wild concept where he actually cut up sheets and laminated them, and then he cut them up. And then he plays a game where you draft
Oh my
which
goodness.
buildings you get, which is banana pants and awesome. And kudos to Jason for coming up with that idea, because that adds a whole nother layer. So for me, the app, it has a tutorial. The rules are clearly available in the app where you can scroll through to learn the game. So it has a lot of the nice features. You can turn the sound on and off, that kind of thing. I like the quick roll option they get, so I don't have to watch the animation of the dice rolling. I just say, just show me the values. And I turned that one on right away. For me, as somebody who enjoys the physical game, on the go for quick plays, I actually really like this game.
Okay.
So there you go. And Mandi, you're the third voice here. You've played it a couple times. What do you think?
Well, yeah, so you've covered a lot of the points. The main one was the one you just said, Suzanne. The biggest complaint I had was not being able to track the resources, so that definitely changed that with the app. But I feel like Eric, when he's talking about it, I don't play this solo. So I feel Eric's frustration as a person who doesn't play the game solo because you are limited to the amount of the buildings you can use. You are literally stuck with, I think it's like 1 or 2 sheets that you can use. That's it. Everything else is solo. It's for solo gameplay. So in this game, playing it solo through the app, it actually is a bit more interesting because you are going to be able to unlock that versus playing in the physical game. You don't. If you're playing with more than one person, that's what you have and that's it. So I can see kind of both sides of it there. Finally, the what you were saying about it being very clean looking, that I like. I do like the way it's set up. I know there's not a lot of text on it, like Eric was saying, but again, I've played the paper version, so for me, it was very straightforward. I liked the look of it, not too complex. So overall, I really liked it.
All right, there you go. Eric, I am so glad you got to join us for this segment because I love hearing your differing opinion. I think it was really interesting, so thank you for your input.
Order up! And now, it's time to order up a slice of game pie.
All right, game pie. I'm so hungry for pie.
Is that the theme song?
That's the theme song.
We're working it. We're workshopping.
Okay, it's
figuring it out,
workshopping.
you
Got
know?
it, got it.
So before we jump in today's game pie, I did get a message about our last game pie, which talked about space games that we liked. I think that was the
Space games.
So we've got a song for everything now. It's space games, exactly. And I missed one, and I'm sorry, and this is probably why I'm terrible at any type of list. Circadian's First Light. So yes, that would have been on my list, but we'll just say it was like after the ones I talked about. So just in case anybody was listening, I do really enjoy that game. I forgot.
Okay, Mandi, I'm gonna call you on this, and I'm just gonna say, Game pie is structured the way game pie is because you enjoy the pie you're given and you can have more pie later, but we don't have to question the pie that we had.
I
So
know.
nobody needs to make you go back and revise your slices. You did what you did and you're good.
But it's one of those things where it's like I had apple pie, but then I realized maybe I should have melted some cheese on it because it does give it that extra zing. It's kind of like that.
I'm so hungry now.
I'm so confused about this metaphor, but okay, yes.
All right, Eric, you go first.
We're excited to have you here.
Exactly. Show us how it's done.
Yes.
All right, these are games that make us smile. That is this slice of game pie. And I'm going to start with a game that is, by all accounts, ridiculous. It's a Leo Colavini game called Familienbande. It's a German game that involves a family tree. And your object, I'm not even sure if the theme makes sense. You are a representative of some aristocratic family, and you want the distinctive trait of that family to work its way through the generations. And the more you're able to do that, the more points you will earn. So, for example, I might be representative of the Green family who has terrible eyesight. Okay. And this is secret. This has all been dealt out. And you are arranging marriages and presenting children to the table. And if you have a couple and they've got icons for these different traits that they have, and if you can get the 3 traits from those 2 cards, from the 6 of the 2 cards, you can play a child from that marriage, and that's where you're going to earn points. So you're churning cards and trying to get your trait to work its way down the tree, and there are more and more descendants as you go. And once you get to, I think, the 5th level, that is the final scoring, and whichever trait has the most points wins. What makes me laugh and smile about this game is that the illustrations are all caricatures. So if you've got this particular aristocratic family with giant noses, they have very humorous illustrations, and we try to give silly names to all of them. And that is where we find the joy in the ridiculous game, Familienbande.
I have not heard of this one, but it does sound like it would, put a little smile on your face.
Good
from
old Eric
2004.
pulling out those German games.
Yep.
Right. All right. One of the ones that makes me smile, and probably because I'm actually kind of good at it, is anomia. So anomia, it's that I think they describe it as, when you play like Jeopardy. Yes, I play Jeopardy a lot, and you know the question, and it's right on the tip of your tongue, and you're like, it's that. So I think that's what they say anomia is. And in this game, it's a card game, and you're putting out cards, and somebody else is placing out cards, and you have one that's in the center, and it has like a picture, of a specific symbol or color, and then it has like a topic or a associated word on the bottom. And what you're trying to do is, when everyone's kind of flipping out their cards, as soon as you get one that's in line with the card that's in the middle, you have to, say what the word is. And sometimes it's right there. It's on the tip of your tongue. You can't get it out. But if somebody else gets it out first, then, obviously they're going to get that card and you continue on forward. And the conditions change. You might have to get the same color or the same, type of category, something along those lines. So anomia for me is one that I played a long time ago with friends. I'm really good at it for some reason, but I think it's all that Jeopardy. So it makes me smile because I can win.
Up for me, as I was thinking about this list, I really made my list personally about games that make me smile, but not the raucous laugh out loud. Because I realized I was throwing games on here that made me just guffaw during it. But I'm like, no, that's a different list. That's a different pie that we're going to serve at.
Games that make you smirk, you're saying?
Yeah.
Games that make me guffaw. A whole breadth of happy expressions that we can do.
It's a vast list, yes.
But I realized one fairly common thing, I guess, is art and how it impacts a game that makes me smile. Because games that make me smile are games that as soon as I pull them out, I'm starting to smile, and I just smile the whole way through for me.
Right.
And first on my list is Happy Pigs. Happy is in the name, folks. They're happy because they're being vaccinated. Happy Pigs is one of these games. It was originally out of the Asian market and then picked up by Yellow, I believe, and updated with these really weird cube-shaped animals.
Yep.
The art itself is adorable and weird and quirky, and I love it, but it often misleads people. In fact, I was teaching this at Dice Tower West just a few months ago, and I had to kind of draw some people in, and they looked and they're like, what's it about? And I explained it to them, they're like, okay. Because the art makes you think it's a kid game.
Yeah.
But Happy Pigs is actually quite a clever, simultaneous action selection game and a bit of resource management where you all pick an action, you reveal it, and then the number of people that pick that action will determine the strength of the action. So you actually want to be the only one picking it because then you'll get the most benefit from your action. If multiple people pick it, you got to share the goodies, and you don't want to share. Ultimately, you're making new pigs, you're feeding pigs, you're selling pigs, you're buying pigs, and you're putting them all on this little farm board that you have. You can get more farm boards, and when you sell them, you get money, and money is how you win the game. So it's quite a clever little game that I like on a mechanical point of view, and I like it on that art point of view. And there's just something quirky about this game. There's something great about that tension of the action selection and the moans and the groans and the excitement if you're the only one that picks an action. Everything comes together in a package that I am just constantly smiling when I play this game from beginning to end, and that is Happy Pigs.
Next up for me is sort of an apples-to-apples variant known as Snake Oil. You have a handful of cards with various descriptive words on them, and you will be presented with a customer. So a football quarterback. And you have to combine two of those cards to present to the football quarterback and give a little bit of a sales pitch as to why this combination of cards is the best product for this person. The reason this is my .14 game because I went to look at it and realized I don't own this game anymore.
Interesting.
I don't know where it went. I may have sold it at some point. I may have taken it to a family game day and left it there. I don't know. It has fallen into the abyss, so I guess it doesn't count, but I have a similar one coming up in a bit. But that was Snake Oil.
I've played this one, actually. I also don't own it, but I had fun with it, surprisingly. I didn't think I was going to like it, but it is a fun one. I agree with you, Eric. All right. Well, Suzanne has also chosen the same one here as me, Happy Pigs, but I have Happy Pigs. What is it? Happy Ducks, Penguins, Cows. I have all the expansions for Happy Pigs because I love it. It's so fun. And I also came to the realization when playing it not too long ago, I wondered what happened to, the pigs. I'm like, oh, they're just going to a different farm. Yeah. That's not.
When they get sold, don't think about it, Mandy. Don't think about it too hard.
Apparently that just escaped me. But I'm still happy because it's just so darn cute. Happy Pigs.
In the cute animals category, my next choice is Quirky Circuits. This is a somewhat recent game released by Plaid Hat Games, and it combines things I love in a very adorable package. So Quirky Circuits is a programming game. I love programming games. It's a mechanic I just really enjoy, so you got me there. Plus, you throw on just a really adorable setting. You get these different characters that you have to move around. There's a little cat on like a robot vacuum cleaner that cruises around. There's a little, all the characters that come as little miniatures are charming as heck. And then you throw in a little bit of the mind, because this is the mind with a programming game in an adorable scenario-based gameplay setting where you get a book, a spiral-bound book, and that becomes your board. And then you get a challenge, and you have to complete that challenge. Maybe you have to get the kitty on the Roomba to go pick up all the treats that are around. And you work it's a cooperative game. It's a cooperative game I like. And you each get to program a card or an action or a series of cards and actions together, but you don't know what your compatriots put down in the program. So you kind of just have to, that's the mind element. And then you flip them over one by one and you just execute the program and you see what happens. And it doesn't always work. But when it works, it's magical. And it's all wrapped up in this adorable package. And it just makes me, even just thinking about it, I'm smiling. I just really enjoy Quirky Circuits. It brings a lot to the table for me.
The biggest smile I got from this game when I first looked at the components and started noodling around with them is when I realized that the dog figure, when the dog picks something up, you are intended to put the token in the dog's mouth and it holds it perfectly. So now you've got this cool little plastic dog holding like a little circular token. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. There's a robot, too, that holds them. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, now I know for next time.
Yep. You got to put those tokens in the mouth. Don't just put it to the side.
Okay.
So my real answer that I wanted to talk about in the same style of game as Snake Oil is, but wait, there's more. I checked. I still own this one. So you are also a pitch person in But Wait, There's More. You are given a product. Everyone is presented with a product they're supposed to pitch. They'll be given 30 seconds. And you have cards in your hand, and you'll pick a feature that goes with that particular product. And when it's your turn to talk, you get your 30 seconds and you'll start talking about how this product and this feature are perfect for selling this thing. And then halfway through, so at some point in the first 30 or 15 seconds, you have to say, but wait, there's more, and blind draw a new card, a new feature, and somehow fold that into your narrative and explain why that new thing is even better than just the first feature that you had chosen so carefully. It is zany fun. It requires you to be fast on your feet, but that stumbling is where the smile comes from. In But Wait, There's More. It's from Toy Vault Games.
So the one on my list that's next up is Joker Rummy. Have any of you heard of it before?
No.
So this was introduced to me by a colleague at work. You know, I often like to practice my French. And this is a game that doesn't have words, so it's all pictures. So you have, I don't know, I can't remember. It's been so long since I've played it, but they have this card where it has icons that you need to try and match from the cards that you have. So it's like getting like 3 of a kind or a straight, you know, so kind of like poker type hands. And you want to try and match those to get points. And so it was a great way for me to practice my French without having to worry about words. I could just had to worry about what the pictures were. So bonjour Carole, merci beaucoup. She's the one who recommended this game, so it's one that we would play quite a bit. So that was it. It was very simple. But the pictures are kind of silly. The cover of this game, when you have a chance, go Google it. It literally is like a person with like a little jester hat. So when you look at it, you have no idea that it's like that kind of game. So it's just silly fun. So Joker Rummy brings a smile to my face because I played it with a really cool person and it helped me make my French better.
Well, speaking of quirky and speaking of weird themes, Eric, for Familienband, Pickomino is on my list of games that make me smile. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Pickomino, this is a Reiner Knizia game that uses kind of domino-style tiles that you play with. They're just nice little components. Thematically, This is a game about birds barbecuing worms.
As they do. Yep.
As they do. Kudos for unique theming Pickomino. Really, Pickomino is a fairly simple push-your-luck game in which you're going to be taking tiles out of a row. They're numbered, and then they'll have worms on them. And you want the most worms because, duh, you're a bird barbecuing worms.
Duh.
And as you're picking tiles, they go in a stack. And a little bit of the push your luck is that your opponents can steal the tile on the top of your stack as well. It's a dead simple game. You can play it with a wide variety of skill levels in terms of game player experience and ages, and it's goofy, it's fun, it's silly, and it's interesting to play. It's one of those games that has a very simple rule set, but just enough to make you think as you're going through it. And it's very, very quick. So Pickomino, I smile from beginning to end. It's a great little push your luck game.
My kids have enjoyed Pickomino as well. I think it's a fun one.
I've never played it. Oh, I'm picturing it. It sounds strange, the art, but it sounds like it could be fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll give it a try sometime.
Yeah, exactly.
My last pick is more, I mean, the illustrations in this game are lovely, but it's more for the reaction it has gotten from my 9-year-old, and that is Dinosaur Tea Party. Part of the conceit in this Restoration Games deduction game is that you're trying to figure out who the other guests at this tea party are. Everyone's given a secret role, and you have to answer yes or no questions based on the traits of your particular character, while everybody else is trying to figure out who you are. But you are supposed to act as if you are at a fancy tea party and ask these questions as politely as possible and with the utmost of care. And to hear my 9-year-old start, "Pardon me, do you happen to be wearing a hat? Because I think it looks lovely on you."
That's adorable.
It's so much fun. And he actually does very well at the game. So he's a bit of a shark, but a very polite one in Dinosaur Tea Party.
I will just interject really quickly that behind the scenes, I do support restoration games. So I want to be really clear that I didn't encourage Eric to say any of this. And
my
I have
pie.
nothing to do with that.
It's your pie,
I can put what I want in it.
Oh, goodness. So my last slice of pie, we'll just say for this episode, is catchphrase. So anybody who's watched my top 100 will know that this made it on the list. And this makes me smile because it's a game that I've played a lot with my family. So I have the old version. So anybody who's familiar with catchphrase will know the new one, I think, is the black. The little thing that you pass around is black with red, and it's digital.
It's electronic, yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have that one. I have the one where you have to, like, it has batteries. Like the two double A's, you got to open it manually to put the sheets in that circulate when you press the button. So I have the old school purple and kind of blue looking one. So.
Mine didn't even have batteries. It's just you hit the button and it just rotates.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
No, that's it. No, that was it. So
Yeah.
they had so I'm thinking of, you know what? I might be
Oh, the
thinking of a different
timer
game.
might have
the
batteries.
Timer. Yes,
Yeah, the
sorry,
timer
you're
had
right. The timer had batteries. Yeah, so I think you and I have the same copy. So in catchphrase, it's a team game, so you're playing on teams, and basically you're trying to get your team to guess the word that shows up on this kind of disc that you have. But you only have certain ways you can describe it. I believe you can use like physical movements, but you obviously can't say part of the word or things like that.
Right.
And then once it's been guessed, then you hand it over to the other team, they check it, and then they click to the next word and do the same thing. You don't want to get buzzed basically because you've done something wrong for them to guess the word. You just go back and forth like that until you get, lots of points, and then whoever's team has the most points wins. So for me, catchphrase is one we've played a lot with my family, and my brother is just horrible at it. And this is really bad how this is going to sound, but gosh, did we ever make fun of him? In a good way, though, because he was laughing. I hope it wasn't crying, and I thought it was laughing, but it brought the family together. So catchphrase.
Catchphrase has seen a lot of play in my family, and I think, talking about the newer editions, I think it's an improvement almost entirely from the version that you and I had, Mandy. The electronic ones are all self-contained now. And so it's one unit. It's got all the questions all preloaded. It's got multiple categories. It's the timer is integrated. It even keeps score for you. It's pretty cool. My eldest played this at a family Thanksgiving something or other and immediately wanted to buy his own copy. And now he asks to play this often, but there's only 4 of us in the house.
Right. So it makes it hard.
So it's not quite the same experience. He looks really forward to like family game days when we have more people over and we can actually play catchphrase as it's intended. With only 2 people on each team, it's a very different game.
That's awesome.
All right, my last slice of pie, game pie, is Best Tree House Ever as a game that makes me smile. This is a card drafting game by Green Couch Games. It's going to be compared to games like Sushi Go, I guess, where you are drafting cards for your treehouse. Each card represents a room in your treehouse, and ultimately they're scoring based on types of rooms that you put in there, and you score points, and there you go. It is a solid drafting game, lightweight drafting game. And the thing that really pushes it up a notch is it is ridiculously adorable and charming. The gameplay theme is you are building the best tree house ever. And from a gameplay mechanism point of view, it adds an additional layer where you can build up groupings of rooms by type. So maybe you have water-themed rooms or snack-themed rooms or rest-themed rooms. And there are scoring mechanisms in the game that will give you points based on that. But that is a spatial puzzle. And as you're building up, you're naturally building up your treehouse. So going from the bottom to top as you go up and balancing your treehouse from left to right. If you put all your buildings, all your rooms on one side, you can't do that, right? Because that would be an unbalanced tree. So that spatial puzzle element really adds a nice extra level to a simple drafting game that makes it all the more intriguing to me. But really, when you look at this game, the art is ridiculously adorable. and you've got water slide rooms, and you've got splash rooms, and you've got the hot dog room, and you've got the candy room. And just if you let yourself sink into this theme and look at this adorable art, you realize you get a hand, and maybe you really should take another food room, but you also have the ball pit room in your hand. And you really want a ball pit room in your best treehouse ever.
Of course.
I mean, yeah, you need another food room for gameplay and points.
How can you be the best without a ball pit?
Right, absolutely.
Seriously. And a game that actually makes you seriously pause for a second to sink into the theme, to maybe prioritize that joy over scoring the extra 3 points. It's amazing. Everything about, I love Best Treehouse Ever. They expanded it a year or so ago, and there's no way you cannot smile from beginning to end when you play it.
Awesome.
Well, Eric, thank you.
Yes.
I hope you enjoyed your first game pie.
Sure, it was delicious and sugar-free.
Okay. Important.
Even better.
Exactly.
And thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It's a delight to have you here.
You bet. Always a joy. I can't wait until we get to hang out in person again. I miss my board game family.
Yes, agreed.
Folks, coming up in the future, we'll be doing some Q&A. It's been a little while, and we know we have a few questions backing up, but we'll welcome more so that we have a nice repository to choose from. You can always send in any questions you have about pie or games or I don't know, sound effects. Eric gave us a very good tip about not resting with your mouth closed when recording.
Oh,
so
yes.
thank you. Yeah.
It's very important. Yes.
It is.
You can reach me at Suzanne@dicetower.com.
And you can reach me at Mandi, that's Mandi with an I, at dicetower.com.
And I'm at Eric with a C, at dicetower.com.
That is true. I did not think about that. Could be a K.
It could be, or a CK, or a Q. It's not. It's a C.
As always, it is a privilege and pleasure to be able to be part of your extended gaming family. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode and giving us your ears. We really, really appreciate it. That sounded gross. You're not giving us your ears. You're lending us your ears.
That's in familial bond. You got to get the ears to travel down.
Next episode is 663. Eric, what are you and Tom going to be talking about?
Well, we just did a top 10 list of racing games. We're going to do a top 10 list of sports games that are not racing games. So you won't hear the same 10, that's for sure. I think you might see some curling. It's coming up.
Woo, this is exciting.
Spoiler alert. Until next time, I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
I'm Mandi Hutchinson.
And I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vasel Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need. Learn more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvasel.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandi, and Eric with assistance from Roy Cannaday and Rob Searing. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming.